My husband left us out on the street with the children and enormous debts. Left on the street. How to fight when my husband disappeared with our hopes and money. Hello, community. My name is Anna, I'm 34, and the last few weeks have been the worst of my life. Here's my story. It all started on the morning of February 15th, 2023, when I woke up in our two-story house in Denver. The alarm was ringing in the kitchen, and I hurried to prepare breakfast for the kids. My eldest daughter, Emily, was always up early to catch the school bus at 7:30, while my younger one, Jack, was still sound asleep, clutching his soft toy. I glanced at the clock, 6:45. Max always left his laptop on the kitchen counter, and usually I'd see him there, rushing through his coffee before work. But this time, something was off. His chair was empty, and his coffee cup was clean. At first, I didn't panic. I thought maybe Max had gone out for coffee or left for some errand. But when I noticed the broken lock on the back door, a sinking feeling welled up inside me. I ran to his office. All his documents were gone, contracts, bills, even the mysterious box with personal papers he always kept hidden. On the desk lay a single note. Anna, I'm sorry. Don't look for me. No explanations, no hope. It felt as if I'd been swallowed by a black hole. I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding as if it were trying to break free from my chest. After 9 years of marriage, I was used to relying on Max. He was my rock, and even when things got hard, we'd always gotten through it together. Now, I was left alone, and the worst part was that just days before, I had no idea how deep his betrayal went. That night, I didn't sleep. Thousands of questions spun through my mind. How would I manage alone with 2 kids? What would happen to our bills, our loans, our future? I was choking on tears, but I couldn't afford to break down. I had to stay strong, though everything inside me was burning. The next day, February 16th, creditors started showing up. Mrs. Smith, a voice called from the door. They held official documents, and their cold eyes looked at me like I was just another target. I read the papers, a debt of over $2 million, countless overdue payments. Things I hadn't even known about. It felt like a nightmare I would never wake up from. How could the person I loved disappear, leaving such a huge hole, not just in our lives, but in our financial future? Trying to keep calm turned out to be harder than I imagined. My mind was in a constant state of conflict, from helplessness to anger, from pity to despair. I had to come to terms with the fact that I couldn't afford to be weak anymore. Comments from Reddit users. User 1986. That's awful. Your life turned upside down overnight. I hope you can find the strength to get through this. Hope for better. My heart goes out to you, Anna. It sounds like a true nightmare, but your determination to stay strong for your kids is inspiring. Finance guru. As someone who's worked in financial consulting, I can tell you stories like this are more common than you think. The key is to get a good lawyer and start with small steps. Mom warrior. I went through a similar betrayal. Stay strong and remember, support can come from unexpected places. A few days had passed since Max's disappearance, and I was still in shock. Life continued mercilessly, piling up problems I had no idea how to handle. On Saturday, February 18th, 2023, I sat on an old wooden chair in the living room, holding a letter from the bank. Mortgage overdue for 3 months, it read. The amount due was $15,432. At that moment, I realized even our home was no longer a safe haven. The floor felt slippery as ice, and I felt like I was about to fall into an abyss. Despair washed over me like giant waves, and each thought grew darker. I imagined us being evicted, my children, 8-year-old Emily and 5-year-old Jack, looking at me with tears in their eyes, knowing their mom could no longer protect them. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it would break. In those dark moments, I reached out to my closest friend, Marina. She came over right away, bringing some food and her support. We sat in the kitchen surrounded by old, worn cabinets, drinking cold tea. I was even afraid to turn on the kettle to save on electricity, and talked about Max. Anna, you have to be strong for the kids, she said, her words piercing through me. And I just nodded. The tears kept coming. Marina had her own issues. Her business was going through tough times because of the crisis. but she still found the strength to help me. Sometimes I wondered, how long can I count on friends' support when I have nothing left to give back? My world was falling apart, and the helplessness was overwhelming. At night, after the kids had fallen asleep, I sat on the bedroom floor, surrounded by bank documents and threatening notes from creditors. Why was all this happening to me? I lived in constant tension, with thoughts that backed me into a corner. What if Max never comes back? What if I never find out where he went and why? Only one thing kept me from completely falling apart: the faces of my children. I had to find a way to protect them, no matter the cost. Comments from Reddit users: Empathy Master, you described these emotions so accurately that it's hard not to feel that fear and pain along with you. I hope Marina helps you hold on. Financial Advisor 123. This is just horrible. I know it sounds cliche, but get a legal consultant as soon as possible. There may be ways to ease the situation. Single mom hero. I was in a similar situation after my husband betrayed me. No one understands the pressure. If you need advice or just someone to talk to, I'm here. Tough but hopeful. Your desire to fight for your kids is already a big win. Hang in there, even if it feels like the world is crumbling. You're not alone. Several more days passed after those painful mornings when I first saw Max's note. All my fears seemed to only deepen with the mystery of his disappearance, and our financial problems began to look not just worse, but outright critical. On Tuesday, February 21st, 2023, I finally gathered my thoughts and decided I could no longer sit idly by. I dug deep in the closet and found old boxes with Max's papers. These were the documents he had always kept out of my sight, saying, "They're too boring for you, darling." I had always trusted him. It seemed that was my biggest mistake. Opening the first folder, I came across a detailed record of financial transactions under Max Smith's name. Large sums had been transferred from various offshore accounts. All these transactions had taken place from 2019 to 2022, but the most disturbing part was the final transaction, dated February 11th, 2023, which showed a significant amount. Around $250,000, sent to an unknown account in Panama. The papers felt heavy, as if each page added weight to my shoulders. My heart pounded so loudly that I could barely hear Jack playing with his toy cars in the next room. Panic began to swell in my mind. Who is this man I spent so many years with? Memories of Max, his smile, his promises that we would always be safe, turned into stabs of betrayal with each new thought. The next day, I reached out to Detective Grayson, who had been handling Max's disappearance case. We met in a small police station at the corner of 5th Street and Willow Lane. The station was old, with cracked walls and a musty smell that chilled to the bone. I handed him the papers and told him everything I could remember about those last days with Max. Grayson listened carefully, but his gaze was heavy. "Anna, you may need legal protection," he said seriously. I realized then that the situation was even more complex than I had imagined. On the way home, I tried not to let my anxiety show around the kids. But Emily, who was more perceptive than I'd realized, came over, hugged me tightly, and asked, "Mom, is everything going to be okay?" I barely held back tears, looking into her big eyes filled with innocence and trust, and I could only reply, "Yes, sweetheart. We'll be okay." Reddit comments. Detective story lover. Wow, this sounds like a plot for a detective series. I can't imagine how you're handling all this, but you're a true hero. Hang in there. Financial insight. Offshore accounts? Sounds like your husband was involved in something serious. You should contact a lawyer. Don't wait. Lost but found mom. This is painful to read because it reminds me of my own experience. The inner struggle and helplessness are familiar to anyone who has gone through a betrayal like this. Brave Soul 21. You are so strong, Anna. Even when the world feels like it's crumbling, you're staying strong for your kids. Don't lose hope. The following weeks turned into an endless whirlwind of problems and fears. The mess of papers at home kept growing, as did my inner chaos. On Wednesday, March 1st, 2023, I found myself sitting in a small room on the 4th floor of an office building on 12th Street, home to one of Denver's law firms. Across from me sat Thomas Green, the attorney Marina had recommended. He had graying temples and a penetrating gaze, as though he already knew my story would be a difficult one. "Anna," he began, "the situation is critical. The debts left by your husband are mostly legal, and the banks may lay claims on your assets, including your home." In that moment, it felt like the world was once again crashing down on me. But Thomas continued, "However, there are some options for protection if we can prove you were not involved in his dealings." Grasping onto those words like a lifeline, I agreed to work with him. Meanwhile, at home, I tried to keep calm. To avoid alarming the kids, I spent a few days clearing out Max's old belongings that still reminded me of our happy life. I threw out his favorite blue blazer that he loved to wear to meetings and packed his business strategy books into cardboard boxes. It was a strange kind of cleansing, but also a haunting reminder we were on our own now and the old life was gone. On March 7th, I received shocking news. Detective Grayson called. "Anna, we've found traces of your husband. He's in Panama, but we can't take any action at the moment." A whirlwind of questions filled my mind again. Why Panama? How long had he been planning all of this? Perhaps I'd never get answers, but the bitterness was unbearable. From that moment, I began thinking more often about my fear and despair. At night, when the kids were asleep, I stood by their beds, watching them sleep peacefully. The responsibility for them was overwhelming. I recalled how we used to go to Washington Park together for picnics and play frisbee. Emily would laugh when Max lifted her into the air. But now, that memory stung like an open wound that wouldn't heal. Thoughts of the future and the fear of losing our home loomed over us like a storm cloud, ready to burst at any moment. Yet, even in this despair, a small spark of hope began to emerge. I received a letter from a local foundation for single mothers offering financial counseling and temporary support. It was the first real help I'd had in a long time. Small as it was, it felt like a chance to start making a change. I felt a new resolve forming within me. I began to realize that I could no longer wait for a miracle. My fear wasn't gone, but I knew that to save my kids and give them a future, I had to stand up and fight, no matter how hard it was. Reddit comments, "Hope in darkness. Reading this breaks my heart. You're holding on so bravely, even though the pain of betrayal and fear for the future are unimaginable. Stay strong. Panama Mystery." Wow, Panama? This sounds like a thriller plot. But in reality, it's so painful. I wish you justice and the answers you're looking for. Single parent support. As a single mom, I know how hard this is. You're already doing more than anyone could imagine. Hang in there. You're not alone. Financial survivor. I'm so glad the Support Foundation reached out. Small steps lead to big changes. Stay strong. You're on the right path.